The last game of the season, Kansas State versus Colorado, but don't let that fool you. Coach Prime, although has a tough task ahead of him with a new quarterback, a no longer a Heisman Trophy winner on both sides of the football, it's still going to be one of those tough matchups to end Big 12 play. Let's talk about it on a Locked On College crossover of Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Buffs.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On College Crossover, Locked On Kansas State, and Locked On Buffs. Christian Rao, Kevin Borba here, bringing you some great Big 12 conversation. Your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And Kevin, we got a lot to talk about with this episode. This is the first time you and I have had a chance to actually sit down and have a conversation. This is the first one for you and I, but we've definitely had some conversations on Big 12 squad shows. We've had some good times there, but we got to dig into Kansas State to Colorado. And although it's the last game of the season, it doesn't mean we should not be talking about it, because I think there could be some huge implications for both programs once Week 12 comes and goes. So lots to talk about there. Then if we have some extra time, I think we should talk about the Big 12 as a whole. Before we dig into this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKDOWNCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Kevin, I just want to ask you straight up. I think the biggest elephant in the room here is no Shedeur Sanders, no Travis Hunter. This is the first time really in the coaching career of Deion Sanders, not just at Colorado, where he's not going to have his son at the quarterback. What's your thought process there, just initially, about not having that in 2025?
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting. I think the only time he hasn't coached Shedeur or Shiloh, his other son, was his first season at Jackson State, which was like the COVID year. So they played like 5 games. So it is like his first full season without his son or sons. I do think there's a added on challenge with his health. There's a press conference going on Monday, which is when we're dropping this, and he's going to talk about his health. I'm very interested to see what he discusses, because he lost 14 pounds because of it. It prevented him from going back to Boulder. He stayed in Texas the entire time. So yeah, I think it's going to be a challenge, right? You lose a quarterback in Shedeur, who I thought he was a first round talent. I don't want to dive into the whole NFL draft thing again. I don't know if he had the first round personality that people were looking for. I think maybe that affected him. But Travis Hunter, obviously you're losing 2 players at once in a way. So you're losing 3 players, counting both Travis Hunters. And I think Shedeur covered up a lot of things for the offense. He was sacked 94 times in 2 years. And Colorado, last year alone was sacked 42 times. Yet Colorado was a 9-win team. So he covered up a lot of flaws. Travis Hunter was basically, I would say, the best player in college football. He was awarded for being the best player in college football. And so you lose that, and it's hard to replace, especially when they did so much. So I do think it's going to be tough. They do have a lot of good players. Deion Sanders himself, he told us, hey, this team is better than what we had. We just don't have as many stars. So that's how I'm viewing this team. I think it should be more well-rounded. I just don't think there's going to be as much star power flying around.
That makes a lot of sense. And you bring Travis Hunter up. There's already talks about it. I've seen some reports pop up about him in the NFL with Jacksonville. He's seeing 2 sides of the football and training camp. I think we're already talking about his snap count in the 80s already, both on offense and defense. So he's trying to make it work in the NFL as well. And I agree with you about Shedeur Sanders, just for the record, should have been drafted higher. When you talk about Colorado and you talk about, trying to add more talent, that's something that they've never seemed to really have a problem with. Trying to get it all working together maybe might be the concern or the question mark. But Deion Sanders is no stranger to bringing in new players. He's been seen on record about adding so many players in the transfer portal year in and year out, right? Talking about the luggage, that crazy press conference or interview he had on YouTube at one point. A lot of transfer portal additions this year, especially in the quarterback room. I know there's some high prospects, some high recruits, as well as some transfer portals. What does Shedeur Sanders' replacement look like?
Yeah, he dipped into the portal, which the transfer portal thing is funny now, because I feel like Deion Sanders, I don't want to say he pioneered it, but he definitely was like one of the leaders and like, hey, to revamp a roster, I'm just going to bring in a ton of new guys, right? Like Barry Odom at Purdue, I think has brought in, I think I saw like 100 new players or something like this. And like a bunch of them are transfers, like majority of them are transfers. And I think a lot of people are starting to do it. I think Deion Sanders was just the first person to realize, hey, if I could get experienced guys who are good, that makes my life easier. For the transfer portal, he went in and brought Liberty transfer Kaden Salter. Kaden Salter started his career at Tennessee. He was dismissed from the team, 4-star recruit. Goes to Liberty, backs up. Oh my gosh, I forgot who it was. Oh, Malik Willis, sorry. The NFL quarterback that they had, and then steps in. 2023 was his best year. Conference USA MVP, threw for like 30 touchdowns, like 5-ish interceptions. One of the best dual threats in college football. I think he really changes the game for Colorado because, and I'm not sure a lot of people realize this, Colorado's had no run game at all. They don't have a 100-yard rusher in a game under Deion Sanders. I think they've yet to have a running back that clips 400 yards in a season under Deion Sanders. So Kaden Salter's running ability will help open up the offense, takes pressure off the offensive line as well, and takes pressure off all the receivers because they lost 4 technically if you count a UDFA. So they lost 4 NFL wide receivers. So he comes in with a ton of experience. Last year, he didn't play as well as he did the year prior, but Liberty lost a lot of talent around him, and he simply just didn't play as well. But he's a dual threat guy, big arm, and I think a lot of Colorado fans are excited to see him play because he brings a new dynamic. And I think if he plays like he did in 2023, Colorado will be a lot better than people think they are. And then the other contender in the room who you mentioned via the recruiting side is Julian Lewis. He's a 5-star. He's very interesting because next year at Colorado, or this year, I guess. I keep saying next year as if the football season feels so
it's right around the corner, Kevin.
Like a month away. He should be a senior in high school. He reclassified, was committed to USC for the longest time, and then flipped to Colorado. He's a 5-star has a great arm. I liked what I saw in the spring game from him. He looked young, but I do think we'll see some Julian Lewis eventually down the road.
All right. Well, talking about the Big 12, Salter, Lewis coming into this conference, I don't think it's a wrong thing to say by any means or any stretch that this is the deepest conference in college football when it comes to the quarterbacks from Kansas State, Arizona State, Iowa State. Where do you put? I'm going to put you on the ball here, put you right on the spot. Where would you put Salter in the Big 12 quarterback rankings?
Let's see. I think on 3 ranked their quarterbacks. Am I echoing? I think on 3 ranked their quarterback, and I had Salter comfortably about 6th or 7th.
Okay.
Like I feel like I like Josh Hoover. I like Sawyer Robinson. Avery Johnson is another one. Who am I missing? Devin Dampier, I feel like, is getting a lot of buzz at Utah. And then I feel like I'm missing someone. I'm gonna regret that. Oh, Rocco Becht. I feel like he's right below that tier. I think if say he transferred in after 2023, I'd probably put him top 3.
I like that. That's fair. I don't disagree with that whatsoever. You brought up your running backs. I think it's safe to bring up my running back now in this case. Dylan Edwards is going to be over the running back 1 for Kansas State this year after DJ Giddens goes to the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, he's an absolute stud. He's exciting to watch. The reason I bring him up and talk about it is because you should be well aware of him because he started his career in Colorado. He was on full display as well. But you mentioned they couldn't get everything out of him. Colorado's had some issues with the running back game. Do you have anyone on that roster that could maybe even be a Dylan Edwards? I'm sure you'd probably like him right now.
Yeah, no, we'd love Dylan Edwards. I think Dylan Edwards, Colorado struggled 2 things when it came to Dylan Edwards, right? They struggled by not being in Kansas because I think I don't think he's a Manhattan native, but I think he's pretty close. That's pretty close to his hometown. And they miss his speed. Right. I think Dylan Edwards is lightning in a bottle. We saw it against TCU the very first game. He exploded. It was a crazy performance. Colorado's running back room, I think, is probably the weakest position on the offensive side of the ball. They lost their starting running back he got tampered with, went to Virginia, and then he ended up at South Carolina. So they lost him. But then again, like I said, they haven't had like a good running back room. But they have a guy in Dallin Hayden who transferred in from Ohio State last year. Didn't really play that well, was a little banged up, but he at Ohio State had a lot of potential. And they had a freshman by the name of Michael Welch who was my sort of go-to, like, hey, this is going to be the guy if there is a guy. And then he got injured. And I think this is probably going to sound crazy, but Colorado's offensive line was so bad that I think the running backs were affected by it as well because their average yards before contact was not much. Like most of the time they were getting hit at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage. So I think this year's offense line should help them out. But if you're looking for a running back name to look out for, I would say Michael Welch. He's just like a bowling ball of a human. He reminds me of, what was his name? They called him the muscle hamster. He played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I want to say it's Doug Martin, if that sounds correct.
Yeah, that sounds right. Muscle hamster. I
Yes.
wasn't ready for that, but yeah, Doug Martin. He's very underrated running back in the day. And it's for the record, making sure you put it on there. I want to make sure my Kansas State folks know that I'm aware. Dylan Edwards is from Derby, so absolutely very close to Manhattan. All right, we got to get into it. We got to talk about where these two teams could be once the final game of the season is. Is this a team where maybe one of them are fighting for Arlington, or maybe as low as bowl eligibility? I don't know if we should stretch that far, but let's do it next right here on this Locked On College Crossover. But first, Kevin, let's chat about today's sponsor, and that's Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether growing your savings plan, buying a bunch of just a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. We were talking before we went on air here. I am like bantering and bargaining back and forth for this nice farmhouse dining table. I wouldn't have that little extra cash in my pocket if it wasn't for Monarch Money helping me save with my finances. And it's a budgeting app, and it's more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, spending in just one place. So in addition to managing your money, Kevin, it's just also building wealth. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Locked On Kansas State, Locked On Buffs, Locked On College Crossover here, digging into the last game of the season, but there's still plenty of time to talk about it, and we have to dig into it. Obviously, I think this is a huge game, and the more I look at Kansas State's schedule, initially I was like, man, this is gonna be easy. This is gonna be a cakewalk. We're going to Arlington. And then maybe it's just me overthinking, because that's just what it is when there's less than 30 days left of the college football, till starts, till week 0, till we get to start off in Dublin. Yeah. But every game I look at, I'm like, well, can Kansas State do it? Last year they started 7-1 and the wheels fell off. I'm so sick of saying that narrative out loud, but that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about week 12, where you're talking about a Colorado team that doesn't have Shedeur Sanders, doesn't have Travis Hunter, but they still have Coach Prime. They still have talent. They have Hall of Fame coaches on the roster as well. There's a lot of things to take from it, right? It's insane. It's insane what Colorado can bring to the Big 12. There's a thought process that, as you mentioned earlier, that Shedeur Sanders hit a lot of the issues with Colorado's offense, mainly the offensive line over the last couple seasons. Without Shedeur Sanders, that offensive line, do they step up? And if so, where do you see this Colorado team once the season is there? Like once we get to the Kansas State game at the end of the season, you start the year with Georgia Tech, Houston, Delaware. You got an interesting non-conference with Wyoming as well. Then you have BYU, you have Iowa State, you have Arizona State. You have a lot of those tough ones on the schedule. And the last 2 games of the season are just dreadful for you, in my opinion. Arizona State and Kansas State, that's a tough way to go. Yeah. Is it fair to me? I don't know if it's fair to me, but is it fair to say that even though you guys had a great season last year, with all the teams you lost, and this is, again, talking about the Big 12 being parity top to bottom, so crazy. I mean, Arizona State won the whole dang thing last year. Could there be a possibility where we go into this game against Kansas State and Colorado, and Coach Prime is looking for his 6th win for bowl eligibility? Is there a possibility? Do you see that happening?
For me, I don't see it happening, but I do think it's a possibility. The odds makers have Colorado's win total at 6.5, which is basically they're saying, like, are you going to make a bowl game and are you not? Right? 6.5 would mean they'd have to win 7 games. If not, they'd be under at 6. So they're kind of in that threshold of, like, people think that they're going to be 6-6, 7-5, which is, I have them 7-5, 8-4. It comes down to the offensive line, which, I mean, you could play this in 2022, 2020, or 2023, 2024. Like, the offensive line has been bad. Like, every year, they've had a different offensive line coach every year, which has continued. But they brought in a lot of proven guys this time around. And I'm hopeful for this offensive line. I think it's their best group that they have, but they're going to have 4 new guys again. So we'll see how that goes. In terms of the schedule in general, I think Colorado really needs to take advantage of the Delawares on the schedule, the Houstons, the Wyomings, BYU. I think BYU is going to be a different team without Jake Retzloff. Arizona and West Virginia in back-to-back weeks. Both of those teams have struggled. So I think Colorado really needs to be in a position to where if they have to worry about it by the final 2 weeks, I'd be concerned because the final 2 weeks of any college football season, one, no one's healthy. Two, it's typically cold, right? And I think Kansas State at that time, I don't know if it's going to be snowing, but it's not going to be sunshine and rainbows at Manhattan. I think that'll probably be a nighttime game on November 29th. So it's going to be brutal weather. Everyone's going to be banged up and everyone's going to be tired. And I think that game could mean a lot for Colorado. I also think if everything goes right, there's a chance where Kansas State and Colorado are playing for like this weird tie into the Big 12 championship. Because if you remember last year, I think it was the last 2 weeks of the season, there was about 7 teams that had a mathematical path to the play or the Big 12 championship. So I think Colorado has a lot of work to be done this year. I do think they need to take advantage of the games where it's like that's winnable, right? Like you can't be getting upset by Delaware or Houston or Wyoming or BYU now. Like you have to take advantage and you have to surprise some people along the way.
That's a good point. And hopefully for the case of Colorado, just so you don't have to worry and have that anxiety, they can get at least their 6th win before going to Arizona State or hosting Arizona State on the 22nd, because those two teams are going to be towards the top. I'm going to get your thought process. We haven't had a chance to talk about the Locked On Network preseason poll here. Colorado was sitting at 10th on this poll, and this was from obviously not the media poll from the Big 12 Conference. This was from all the hosts of Locked On Big 12 schools. So Colorado comes in at 10th here after having a 9-win season. Are you happy where this is at? Do you think it's a smart move? What do you think about Colorado at 10 out of 16 teams from the Big 12 this year?
Yeah, and you probably don't disagree with Kansas State at 2, or do you? Do you disagree with Kansas State at 2?
I put them 2. I didn't have them at number 1. So actually I'm okay with 1, 2. I gave Arizona State their flowers. So I actually am okay with it.
So I did my own rank, as we all did. I did my own rankings. Sure. I went Texas Tech, ASU, Kansas State, TCU, Baylor, Iowa State, Utah, Colorado at 8. So I had Colorado 2 spots sooner. The teams that I'm not confident in, that I think like we're just gassing up too much, is Kansas. I get Jalen Daniels is good, but like he's Kansas State fans, shout out. I don't think he's been healthy ever, and I'm not like wishing on his downfall. I hope the young man can have a healthy career. Sure. He's 22 years old. I saw that he thinks he's the oldest returning starting quarterback in college football. And I'm like, sir, there's at least 4 that I could think of right now, and I'm not even like counting the group of 5 guys I'm not aware of. So he's never been healthy. He's good when he is healthy, but that's been a while. Another team that I'm not high on that I feel like our colleagues were was BYU. I think a lot of us did that ranking before the Retzlaff situation was finalized, but yeah, I think Colorado belongs in the middle. I do think that there's a path to them being a contender for the Big 12 title, and then there's a path to them being a team fighting for bowl eligibility, as you mentioned earlier. Like I could see either way, and it comes down to basically how good is this team without Shedeur and Travis, and how good are the coaches at figuring out life without those two? Because it's hard to really compare, because I don't think a lot of teams have had so many or 2 guys who are as important as Travis and Shedeur. Like they had their jerseys retired. Like that's a big deal, whether people agreed with it or not. That's how impactful they were to the program. And I don't think you just replace that by going, hey, we brought in 3 corner transfers, right? I think you have to replace them with personnel, and you have to replace them with coaching. And so I think there's pressure on everyone to sort of come together and figure out that solution. But yeah, I think I have them at 8. 10's not terrible, right? I think the Big 12 there's probably going to be 10 teams within 1 win of each other, or within 2 wins of each other. That's just how the Big 12 is. And that's sort of the problem the Big 12 has, until someone could sort of step up and be that. And we could talk about this in the next segment. Until someone could step up and be, for lack of a better term, Oklahoma, who wins the Big 12 6 years in a row. The Big 12 is consistently going to be looked at as like lesser than, right? Because everyone's just fighting for positioning, and like we talked about earlier, there's 7 teams with the last week where it was like, if Kansas State wins against X team and this team loses and this team like stubs their toe and this team drinks a cup of water at 12 o'clock, like they had that too many of those scenarios, right? So I think Colorado is a player. I don't know if they'll be as good as last year, but I do think they have an opportunity.
Based on last year and historical context, about 10 to 11 teams from the conference become bowl eligible. So if Colorado can make this top 10, top 11, then you shouldn't have anything to worry about. And as you mentioned, there's an easy chance for them to be a contender because we've seen it happen just last year. Let's get into this more conversation about the Big 12 outlook. And then I want to get your thought process on what are the top storylines you're looking at heading into fall camp. Let's do that as we are finishing up this Locked On College crossover of Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Buffs. But first, Kevin, let's talk about game time. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with stress or ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% with killer last-minute deals. So take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create a code, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And welcome back to this Locked On College crossover of Locked On Buffs and Locked On Kansas State. Christian Rao, Kevin Borba bringing you some fun Big 12 talk. And this is a Week 12 matchup, but obviously never too early to talk about a college football game that involves Kansas State and involves the Buffaloes, Coach Prime, without Shedeur Sanders, without Travis Hunter. Obviously a huge narrative that's going to be happening, and I'm sure Kevin's already sick of hearing that over and over again, but that's just the way it is, the way the cookie crumbles this year. We talked about preseason poll. The Buffs are in the middle. Kansas State sits at 2 here. You know, you already said you thought about Texas Tech and Arizona State as your 1-2. That's your prediction for Arlington. I don't hate it. I had Arizona State, Kansas State. And so obviously we're really close to. I had Texas Tech at 3. So our 1 through 3 is basically the same. Let's talk about Texas Tech real quick. Obviously a lot of spending in the transfer portal. They were not afraid to do so. I've seen some reports that they've had a $28 million roster. They're really changing the game, not just for the Big 12, but for college football as a whole. A team like Colorado and a team like Kansas State, that's not always the easiest thing to play catch up with. Even if you have a guy like, Coach Prime, who, the Showtime Prime, who's not afraid to, be a money kind of guy. What's your thought process on how Texas Tech is handling this new world of NIL?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say it's luck, because it's not luck, right? There's a lot of things that went into it, but it certainly doesn't hurt to have a former player go on to be an oil tycoon, right? And every program around
$1 billion.
Yeah, right. And every program around the country wants that, right? Michigan had, I don't know what he did, but he was a billionaire, right? There's certain programs where it's like they have these big donors where that sort of changes the trajectory of the program. And for Texas Tech, they have historically not been a player in the Big 12, right? I think if you look it up, oh gosh, there was the Michael Crabtree season. I want to say it was like 2010-ish. They've only had one 10-win season, right? They're a habitual 7 to 9 win team, habitual 5th to 3rd place team in the Big 12, right? And this move to have someone come in and just throw cash at everything, it really lifts the program up, right? They had the number 1 transfer portal class. I saw a report the other day that they actually have to spend 30% more than the average program because of being in Lubbock. Because obviously, and I'm sure Lubbock's a nice place. I've never been, so this isn't me saying this, but the average perception about Lubbock is that it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's not like the most exciting place to live. And so you're paying a little extra to get guys to come to a place that's not Los Angeles or it's not Miami, right? So they have the money. They're taking advantage of it until college football as a society, I don't want to say society, but until college football as a sport comes together and forms some sort of regulation on how people are able to be paid. Why not do it, right? I think that these are the rules that they're operating within. They're doing it the right way. I'm sure Colorado fans, Kansas State fans would love to throw $30 million at a transfer portal class or recruiting class. And I don't know Kansas State's list of alum off the top of my head, but I know a lot of Colorado fans are hoping that the South Park creators maybe shoot over a few of their $1 million that they got in their new deal, right? So I think Texas Tech's doing it the right way, right? Until there's rules that say you can't do it, why would you not do it this way? And I think they return a lot of people, they brought in a lot of talent, and honestly, Texas Tech is probably under the most pressure in my opinion, like in the Big 12, right? You can't throw $30 million at a transfer portal class and go 8-5 or 8-4, excuse me. Like if they did that, I'd be like, this is a disappointment. You just bought a 4th place team, right? So I think if Texas Tech isn't playing in Arlington, 1, Joey McGuire, pressure on him, 2, disappointment.
I'm with you. Yeah, I mean, Joey McGuire can't get over that 9-win hump. So no, I'm absolutely on board with that. And that brings up to my next thought process. Obviously, Arizona had a rough year last year. Defense wasn't where it needed to be. They had to make some changes. We talked about a team like TCU, who made it to the national championship in 2022, then really hasn't done much with Sonny Dykes over the last couple seasons. To me, they're the most confusing team. I honestly do not know how to predict TCU this year. I can't wait to have a conversation with Steven Simcox about that. And then you mentioned Joey McGuire. You mentioned the fact about Oklahoma State. How about him? Mike Gundy, 0-9 in Big 12 last year. Any of those any of those coaches do you see being on the hot seat in 2025? Like any of them make sense? And if so, and we add one more little caveat to that, can you see it happening in the middle of the season? Because it seems so much more important to hire a new coach to get ready for this new transfer portal.
Yeah, it's a great question. For sure, Mike Gundy. I think not only is he going out sad, he's going out sad and loud. So, Cody, our Locked On Oklahoma State host, or Locked On Cowboys guy, he gives us a great Oklahoma State rant every time we do the Locked On Big 12 squad. And I think the one moment that stood out to me when Cody was talking about Mike Gundy was when he called all of the people poor, all the fans poor about Oklahoma State. And then his comments about Ollie Gordon, about how he drunk all the, or does, I don't want to say it again because it was a whole thing, but drives drunk all the time or whatever. Like, I think Mike Gundy is just an old bitter coach who things aren't going his way. I think they are one of the programs that are being hurt the most by the current landscape of college football. And I could see him being fired if things don't go well. And I don't think things will go well for them. I had them projected. I had them 15th. The only team I have worse than them is West Virginia. So I think it'll be Mike Gundy. The Arizona coach, I liked him at San Jose State. I really did. And I don't know why things didn't work out at Arizona. I know they lost a chunk of players, but I think things are going to get harder. I don't know if a lot of people realize this. No Fafita and Tetro McMillan, they went to school together and they played on the same team since like 8th grade. They actually went to a school that my friend's uncle was the principal of. So there's like, let me draw out the board. It's like my friend's uncle, principal, these two, but they've been playing together for their whole life. And now no Fafita doesn't have his best target. So he probably threw to Tetro McMillan 60% of the time. So I think that makes his life more difficult. But I do think Arizona would probably be my other bet. Because like you mentioned, you have to move on quick, because if you are a team looking for a coach when the transfer portal window has already opened, good luck, right? Until they figure out the transfer portal windows, which I think the obvious like 2 + 2 = 4 situation is just put it after the entire season. So there's no people leaving during bowl games or the playoff. You have to figure out a way to have a plan, right? If you're going into like, let's say, for example, we'll use Oklahoma State because I think we both. Do you agree that Mike Gundy's going to get fired before I speak for you? Sorry.
I think he's on the hot seat. Yeah, I think he's on the hot seat. Yeah, for sure.
So let's say it's November 8th. So there's 3 weeks left in the season, and Oklahoma State's sitting at, they have 2 wins on the year, right? Mm-hmm. You need to decide before it gets to November 29th whether you're going to fire Mike Gundy or not. You don't need to be like, oh, let's talk about it. Right. You need to have a plan in place. And I think that's sort of the message for everyone is like, have a plan in place or you're going to get left behind. And I covered Stanford for SI back in the day. I was on that beat. And when David Shaw left, that program is still feeling, granted, Stanford can't take a lot of transfers, but they're still feeling the repercussions because they couldn't hire their next coach because he was in the FCS playoffs until well into the recruiting cycle. The transfer portal had already been open. By the time he was hired, he didn't have a full staff anyway. And then the next year, they didn't field a full roster. The following year, they didn't field a full roster. Like, Stanford is still feeling the repercussions of like falling behind by one decision because their coach waited until the final week of the season to announce he was stepping down. So don't be in that position. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's wild. And going back to the Gundy conversation, maybe when they have 2 wins in November or something, I'm with you. I think once that 7th loss hits and bowl eligibility is not even a
Yeah.
possibility, then I think you just have to call it. And that might be for more than just Gundy, maybe for Brennan, maybe
Yeah.
even for other teams. Who knows? But yeah, absolutely. Hey, before I get you going, let you go here. Fall camp right around the corner. It started for Kansas State. I know it's about to start for Colorado here. What you really paying attention to? Like, if you had to pick one main storyline, what is the
Yeah.
one that's like, man, I can't wait to see what this position group or this player can do?
It's got to be the quarterback battle. Deion Sanders hasn't been there. So, and he said at Big 12 Media Days that he doesn't know who the quarterback is, which is why he did the rare, possibly if only the first time, I've never seen it. He brought both quarterbacks to Media Day, which I thought was interesting.
Wow.
Usually if you don't have a quarterback, you don't bring one. Like if it's like still an ongoing battle, you don't bring one. But I think the quarterback battle, because I think that sort of will determine Colorado's immediate future, right? If Kaden Salter loses, then it's like, oh dang, like you're really throwing like a high school senior into the fire right away. And if Kaden Salter wins, it's like, okay, like can he be what we once saw? So gotta go the quarterback battle. Replacing Shedeur is not an easy task. I think it's probably easier to replace Travis in a sense because, and I say this very lightly, like you could moneyball him in the sense of like 3 guys to replace one on both sides of the football, where Shedeur, it's like, I don't know if you could replicate that or replace that. So that's what about you? Kansas State, what are we looking for?
That's a really good point. I like that about in the aggregate about Travis Hunter, but I'm looking at the wide receivers, Kevin. There's so much wide receiver talk with Kansas State. Jace Brown coming back, but they bring size and they bring some 6'3", 6'4" guys out of the portal. And I think that's going to help Avery Johnson with some of the throwing inconsistencies that he had in year 1 as the starter. Avery Johnson looks great. He's put on some weight and he's got faster. He hit the 23-mile-an-hour club in strength and conditioning. So he's fast and he's I think he put on like 16 pounds as well.
Oh,
so
oh.
Bigger and faster, that's always a win. Talking about a dual threat quarterback in Avery Johnson. So adding in that type of height and size to an already flashy offense with Dylan Edwards and Jace Brown on the speed and a tight end room that's so exciting as well. I'm most excited for that. If the wide receivers can do exactly what I think that they are capable of with this size, I think this might be one of the best, if not the best, offense in the Big 12 in 2025.
There we go. I like to hear that. Well, I don't like to hear that, but I like to hear for you.
I love that. Well, thanks so much for joining us on this Locked On College crossover of Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Buffs. Make sure to check out both channels because we are bringing you coverage every single day, all the way up to the season, and of course into it as well. And if you want even more college coverage, you check out the portal, Locked On Portal, bringing you stuff. Brian Smith, latest rumors, portal entries, signings. Even though we're getting closer to the season and the portal is technically closed, he's got lots of recruiting and stuff to talk about. So be the most informed fan on rapid changes of the college football landscape. Find the portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Of course, that's after watching Locked On Kansas State and Locked On Buffs. Be sure to hit that like button, hit subscribe, rate wherever you're listening. And this has been a Locked On College crossover.